Marcus Carter stood in the middle of the courtroom, the mop still gripped in his dark hands, as the entire room fell into a stunned silence. "I will defend her," he said. His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with the kind of resolve that comes from a man who has lost everything and found something worth fighting for again. His calloused fingers tightened around the wooden handle of the mop as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. At the defendant's table, Isabella Sterling, the billionaire tech founder whose own high-priced lawyer had just abandoned her in front of the world, lifted her head and stared at him. Her sharp blue eyes, rimmed with exhaustion and disbelief, locked onto his. She didn't know his name. She had passed him in these halls 100 times and never once seen him. But now, in this moment, he was the only person in the room standing up for her. None of them knew. Not the reporters furiously typing. Not the smug prosecutor smirking from across the aisle. Not even Isabella herself. That this simple, quiet moment would mark the beginning of the unraveling of one of the darkest conspiracies in American corporate history. Before we start, let me know where you're watching from. Comment below with your city or country. And if you believe that love and justice can rise from the ashes of betrayal and loss, hit that subscribe button because this story will remind you why hope is worth holding on to. Before we dive deeper into this story of justice, courage, and redemption, let me ask you something. Do you believe that anyone, whether a proud billionaire or a quiet janitor, deserves to be treated fairly under the law? If you do, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stories about silent heroes like Marcus deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's see what drove a forgotten legal genius to rise up against the very system that once crushed his life. But before everything began to shift, ask yourself this. What do you think made Marcus, someone who had lost nearly everything, step out of the shadows at that exact moment? The autumn sunlight of New York filtered through the tall windows of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, casting streaks of gold across the marble floor that Marcus Carter had just finished cleaning. 5 a.m. Just like every day for the past 15 years, he was already here. A 45-year-old black man with close-cropped hair beginning to gray at the temples, deep brown eyes that had seen too much, and hands that told the story of hard work and survival. He wore a Navy maintenance uniform with the word maintenance embroidered on the chest pocket. The tiny apartment in Queens was still pitch black when he left at 4 a.m. The room had only a single bed, a small stove, and a bare wall adorned with just one photograph, the wedding picture of him and Sarah from 17 years ago, before cancer took away the woman he loved. Beside it was a picture of their daughter, Leah, now 20 and in her final year of college. In the frame, she was only 5, smiling brightly in her mother's arms. Marcus didn't turn on the lights when he left home. Winter electricity bills were high, and with a salary of $2,800 a month, every penny mattered. Breakfast was just black coffee, toast, and whatever food he could pack from the courthouse's basement cafeteria, a small privilege for maintenance staff. That morning, as he pushed his cleaning cart down the third-floor hallway, Marcus paused in front of courtroom 302, the place where the biggest cases happened. And today, one of the most significant legal battles in New York history was set to begin. The lawsuit against Isabella Sterling, the tech billionaire worth $14 billion. Marcus didn't hear about the case from the news. He didn't own a TV. He heard about it from the nights he spent cleaning that very courtroom. He had seen the polished lawyers, heard the things they said when they believed no one was listening. To them, the janitor was just furniture, invisible, not worth noticing. But Marcus Carter hadn't always been invisible. 15 years ago, He had been one of the rising stars at Whitfield and Associates, a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. He had a corner office overlooking Central Park, the reputation of never losing a major case, and a brilliant future ahead of him. Until everything collapsed. He pushed the memories away. That was the past. Now he mopped floors, polished benches, emptied trash. An honest job that paid the rent and allowed him to occasionally send a bit of money to Leah, even though she always refused to take it. As Marcus was about to leave the courtroom, his phone buzzed. A message from the supervisor. "Carter, room 302 needs to be cleaned again. VIP today." Marcus exhaled. VIP meant pressure, inspections, and countless opportunities to get yelled at for the smallest mistake. But as always, he didn't complain. By 9 a.m., the courtroom was packed. Reporters squeezed into every available seat. Lawyers straightened their ties. Keyboards clicked furiously. At the defense table, Isabella Sterling sat alone. She was 38, but looked as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her once sharp blue eyes were now clouded with exhaustion. Her Armani suit was flawless, yet her slightly hunched shoulders and tightly clasped hands betrayed the tension consuming her. Next to her were 6 empty chairs. The seats reserved for her legal team from Preston Holloway and Schmidt, the most expensive firm in New York, charging $6,000 an hour. But they didn't show up. Marcus checked the clock. 9:15. The trial would begin in 15 minutes. Isabella kept calling. Each time she put the phone down, her face grew paler. Marcus knew. They weren't coming. They had abandoned her. "All rise." The court officer's voice echoed through the room. Judge Caroline Fisk entered. Stern, cold, experienced. She paused when her eyes landed on the empty chairs. "Miss Sterling," she said, her voice sharp. "Where is your legal team?" Isabella stood trying to stay composed, but her voice trembled. "I don't know, Your Honor. They were here yesterday. I've tried contacting them all morning, but no one answered." Prosecutor Catherine Morris rose, a thin, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "Your Honor, it is clear the defense has been abandoned. We move for a default judgment." The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Reporters typed frantically. Judge Fisk sighed. "If you have no legal representation, the court cannot delay indefinitely. I am forced to. I will defend her." The voice, warm, deep, and cracking with emotion, cut through the room like thunder. Everyone turned. Marcus Carter stood there next to his cleaning cart, the mop still in his hand. The lights reflected off his graying hair, and his face, lined by 15 years of endurance, was now illuminated with determination. Chuckles broke out first, soft, then louder. But Marcus didn't flinch. He set the mop down and walked up the aisle. 2 decades of mopping floors couldn't erase the posture of a lawyer who had once won major cases in this very room. Judge Fisk raised an eyebrow. "Who are you?" "My name is Marcus Carter, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady now. "I would like to represent Miss Sterling." Catherine Morris let out a mocking laugh. "A janitor wants to be a lawyer?" Marcus met her gaze, unflinching. "I was a member of the New York Bar Association for 18 years. A wave of whispers spread across the room. Marcus pulled out his worn wallet and produced his old license, still valid. The judge examined it, her face paling slightly. "Mr. Carter," she said slowly, "how long has it been since you practiced?" 15 years, Your Honor." The air grew heavier. "And you believe you are still competent?" Marcus stood tall. "Your Honor, this woman deserves to be defended. I know the law, I know procedure, and I understand what justice means." Isabella stood. She looked into his eyes, not seeing desperation, not seeing ambition. She saw sincerity, the kind that a 6,000 an hour legal team could never offer. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, her voice firm. "I accept Mr. Carter." The courtroom erupted. Judge Fisk rubbed her temples. "You have 15 minutes to confer with your client, and do not delay the proceedings." Marcus approached the defense table only to be blocked by security. "Sorry, only attorneys allowed in this area." Marcus held out his card. The judge nodded to confirm. The guard stepped aside awkwardly. When Marcus sat down, he felt every pair of eyes fixed on them, but he looked only at Isabella. "Something is very wrong here," he whispered. "This isn't just about your lawyers abandoning you. Everything is orchestrated." Isabella whispered back, her voice trembling. "How do you know?" "Because I've seen thousands of cases over the last 15 years, Marcus said quietly. "This one isn't natural." "So who?" "We'll find out," Marcus said. "But first, I need to hear everything." Isabella looked at him, the man she had passed by every day without noticing, the man who stood up for her when no one else did. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had found the right person. 15 minutes passed like 15 seconds. Isabella spoke almost without pausing, trying to compress 3 months of legal preparation into an emergency briefing. She explained her technology, a quantum processor that operated at room temperature, a breakthrough capable of changing everything from computing and data to energy production. She told him about Nexus Innovations, the company accusing her of stealing their technology. And she told him about the 3 months of hell since the allegations surfaced. Stock prices plummeting, the press circling like vultures, partners turning their backs. Marcus listened without taking notes. He didn't just hear every word. He absorbed them. The pauses, the moments when her voice hitched, the slight tremor when she mentioned certain names. His deep brown eyes never left Isabella's face. She realized he was doing more than listening to the content. He was reading her, the tension in her voice, the hesitation when mentioning certain details, and the absolute certainty when she spoke about the technology she had created. "Time's up," the clerk announced. Judge Fisk struck the gavel. "Mr. Carter, prepare for your opening statement." Marcus rose and walked to the podium. He felt the full weight of every gaze in the room. Some skeptical, some curious, some outright condescending. How many years had it been since he last stood here? How many nights had he lain awake in his small Queens apartment, dreaming of a moment like this, only to wake up again with a mop in his hand? He placed his hand on the podium, feeling the smooth wood beneath his palm. Drawing a deep breath, Marcus lifted his head and looked directly at the 12 faces in the jury box. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice calm and clear. "My name is Marcus Carter. First, I apologize for my appearance. I'm not wearing an expensive suit like my colleague across the aisle. I don't have a fancy office or a team of assistants. Less than an hour ago, I was still mopping the floor of this courtroom." Soft laughter rippled from the back. Marcus heard it clearly, but did not falter. "But for 15 years, I have stood in this room every day, watching justice unfold. I have seen truth triumph, and I have seen truth buried." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I have learned that justice does not depend on the price of your suit or the name of the law firm you hire. It rests on something much simpler: the truth." His voice grew stronger. "And the truth in this case is simple. Isabella Sterling stole nothing. She created a revolutionary technology through her own intellect, toil, and talent. Meanwhile, those who truly wish to seize that technology are using the legal system as a weapon." Catherine Morris shot to her feet. "Objection! He's arguing. Not delivering an opening statement. Sustained, Judge Fisk said. Mr. Carter, keep your remarks to the facts. Marcus nodded. My apologies, Your Honor. I will let the evidence speak for itself. And I promise you only this. By the end of this trial, it will be unmistakably clear who is telling the truth and who is lying. He sat down. It wasn't a polished opening, nor was it adorned with dazzling rhetoric, but it was sincere, and from the quiet nods of a few jury members, Marcus knew at least someone was truly listening. Catherine Morris stood for her opening statement, tall, slender, with a smile sharp as glass. She walked to the podium as if it were her personal stage. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, her voice smooth as silk. This case is not nearly as complicated as the defense wants you to believe. It is extremely simple. Theft. She walked slowly, her gaze sweeping across the faces before her. Isabella Sterling stole proprietary inventions belonging to Nexus Innovations, a company that invested hundreds of millions of dollars developing quantum processing technology. She used her connections in the industry to access internal research, copied the designs, and filed for patents under her own name. Morris paused, letting the accusation hang heavily in the air. We will prove this with documents, expert testimony, and the accounts of her own former employees. By the end of this trial, there will be no doubt Isabella Sterling is a thief, and thieves must be held accountable. She sat down with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. The rest of the morning passed like a blurred nightmare. The prosecution called its first witness, a tech analyst who claimed Isabella's design was too similar to be a coincidence to Nexus's internal records. When it came time for cross-examination, Marcus stood, feeling every muscle in his body tense. 15 years since he last did this. 15 years since he last stood before a witness, peeling back details one by one, searching for the smallest inconsistencies to unravel the bigger picture. But when he opened his mouth, something strange happened. The words returned naturally. Questions flowed into one another as if he had never left the profession. He guided the witness through overlapping details, mismatched timelines, technical logs the witness claimed to have seen but wasn't reasonably able to access. And as the contradictions began to emerge, Marcus felt something awaken inside him, something he had buried for 15 years, the man he used to be, a lawyer. By the end of the day's session, Judge Fisk looked at Marcus with a different expression, one with a hint of reluctant respect. Mr. Carter, she said, you might want a proper suit for tomorrow. Marcus nodded. I'll take care of it, Your Honor. But as he left the courtroom, he knew the truth. He couldn't afford a new suit. The only suit he owned had been moldy in his closet for over a decade, and now hung loosely on him after years of physical labor. Isabella caught up to him in the hallway. Mr. Carter, she called. He turned. This time he looked at her not as a high-profile client, not as a billionaire on magazine covers, but as a human being clinging to her final thread of hope. She was taller than he expected, carrying the confident posture that money could buy. But in those sharp blue eyes, fear was something money couldn't hide. Thank you, she said softly. I don't know why you're doing all this, but thank you. Marcus shook his head. Don't thank me yet. We've barely begun, and we need to talk seriously. I need to see every document related to this case. Emails, notes, schematics. If we're going to fight, I need to know everything. Isabella nodded. Come to my place tonight. I keep everything there. I can't, Marcus replied. I have a work shift tonight. Isabella frowned. A shift? But you're my lawyer. And I'm also a janitor who needs to pay rent, Marcus said calmly. The court isn't paying me to defend you, Miss Sterling. This is pro bono, free of charge. Which means I need to work if I don't want to get fired. For the first time, Isabella truly felt the distance between her world and his. For her, paying $6,000 an hour for lawyers once felt normal. For this man, skipping a single shift could mean not having enough to pay rent. "I'll pay you," she said immediately. "No," Marcus answered, firm. "If this were about money, I wouldn't be here today. I'm not doing this for prestige or compensation. I'm doing it because it is the right thing to do." He paused for a beat, then added gently, "But I'll come after my shift. Is midnight too late for you?" Isabella's voice softened. "Midnight is perfect." And somewhere deep inside both of them, they understood. The real battle had only just begun. At midnight, Marcus parked his old Toyota in front of Isabella's mansion gate, still wearing his janitor uniform, which carried the lingering scent of cleaning chemicals from his 8-hour shift. He hadn't had time to go home and change. The gate guard had been told to expect him, but the way the man looked at Marcus's car said everything. "You don't belong here." As he entered through the main door, another security officer escorted him, not to assist, but to make sure he didn't wander into restricted areas. Isabella was waiting in her office, still in the suit she'd worn to court, though she'd removed the jacket. She looked exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. "Coffee?" she asked. Marcus nodded. He needed the caffeine to stay alert. She poured him a cup from an espresso machine that cost more than his monthly rent. The flavor was rich, smooth, and unfamiliar compared to the instant coffee he drank every morning. "All right," Marcus set the cup down. "Tell me the real story, not the version you told your lawyers, not the version for the media. The truth." Isabella sat, her gaze fixed on her coffee cup, as if it held the answers she'd been too afraid to confront. "I started Quantum Corp 12 years ago," she said, her voice softening as the memories pulled her backward. "Back then, I was just a recent MIT graduate, obsessed with quantum computing. Everyone told me that stable quantum processing at room temperature was impossible. Qubits decay too quickly, they said. Only multi-million-dollar labs and extreme cooling systems could achieve anything close to that." Isabella's eyes lit up when she talked about her work. The first time Marcus saw the real woman beneath the armor of wealth and prestige. "But I had an idea. What if, instead of fighting the decay, we used it? What if the instability itself became part of the computation?" She gave a small laugh, not sure whether it was pride or bitterness. "They called me crazy. My professor told me I was wasting my time." "But you proved them wrong," Marcus said. Isabella nodded lightly. 6 years, working in a matchbox-sized apartment, living on student loans, no funding, no lab, just me and my laptop. She stood, opened a safe hidden behind a painting, and pulled out a thin folder. "Here," she handed it to him. "All my original research notes, dated, notarized, everything. Proof that I developed this technology before Nexus was even founded." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were hundreds of pages of equations, diagrams, handwritten notes. Raw, vivid, undeniable. "Why didn't your previous lawyers bring this up?" he asked. "They said it wasn't necessary," Isabella replied, exhaustion in her voice. "They said they had a better strategy." Marcus snapped the folder shut, jaw tightening. "Not introducing your most critical evidence isn't a strategy. It's sabotage." Isabella's face paled. I mean your lawyers were paid to lose," Marcus said plainly. "The only question now is, who paid them?" They worked until 3 in the morning, going through every email, memo, and schematic. The deeper they dug, the clearer the pattern became. Crucial evidence ignored, key witnesses never called, objections made at the wrong times. A defense strategy almost deliberately suicidal. Isabella's former legal team wasn't incompetent. They were actively sabotaging her. Is there anything you haven't told me? Marcus asked. Anything strange that's happened in the past few months? Isabella hesitated. There is one thing. Sophie Grant, my assistant. She copied files onto a USB drive. Marcus narrowed his eyes. And you didn't question her? I trusted her. Sophie has been with me for 5 years. In cases like this, Marcus said slowly, nothing is accidental. If she copied data, someone put her up to it. He looked at Isabella, his voice firm. Tomorrow, no matter what I say or ask in court, you must not react. No surprise. No correcting me. Everything is already part of the plan. Why? Because we're being watched, Marcus replied. Maybe not right this second, but somewhere, somehow. And every plan we make, assume the enemy already knows. A chill ran down Isabella's spine. You've been through this, haven't you? Marcus was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly. 15 years ago, I took a case against Atlantic Energy Corporation. An engineer was whistleblowing about concealed safety violations. 3 workers died. I had enough evidence, but before the trial, the evidence vanished from my office. Isabella held her breath. They said I fabricated it, forged documents to harm the company. I was suspended, then disbarred. It took me 4 years to prove my innocence. 4 years working odd jobs, 4 years watching my daughter grow up without her father fully present. They destroyed you, Isabella whispered. They tried, Marcus corrected, but they didn't take the one thing that mattered, my knowledge of the law. He looked at her, eyes steady. And that's something they will never take from you. When Marcus left at 4 a.m., the sky was still smudged dark, like spilled ink. Isabella stood by the window, watching the glow of his car fade down the long road. It wasn't the first time she felt alone in this fight, but for the first time in months, in that darkness, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The next morning, Marcus walked into the courthouse wearing a suit he had bought from a thrift shop the night before. It wasn't new, it wasn't fancy, but it was clean, pressed, and presentable. $20 he could barely afford, but Judge Fisk had been right. Today, he needed to look like a real attorney. The courtroom was packed. The story of the janitor turned lawyer had spread across the city, and reporters squeezed into every available space. When Marcus entered, a few people even clapped, hesitant, uncertain, torn between cheering and mocking. He ignored all of it. He focused on the only thing that mattered, the truth. Catherine Morris was ready. A deep, wine-red power suit, squared shoulders, sharp eyes, the look of someone who believed the verdict was already hers. The prosecution calls Dr. Leonard Bryce, she announced. Dr. Bryce stepped onto the witness stand, a man in his 50s, wire-rimmed glasses, the polished air of an academic. For nearly 20 minutes, Morris let him construct a narrative in which he had developed the core algorithms of the quantum technology, and Isabella had stolen the credit. Quantum Corp, he claimed, is where the idea truly began. Marcus sat still, taking notes, expression unreadable. But inside he was assembling the puzzle, the timelines, the claims, the inconsistencies, and none of it aligned. When his turn came, Marcus rose slowly. He carried a thin file, walking to the lectern with a calmness so steady it silenced the room. Dr. Bryce, he began, voice gentle but firm. You testified that you developed Quantum Corp's core algorithms from January through March of 2021, correct? That's correct. Then please help me clarify something. Marcus lifted the first document. This is your employment record with Quantum Corp. Would you read your start date for the court? Bryce glanced down, and his face drained of color. April 21st, 2021. I'm sorry, Marcus said softly. "I didn't catch that." "April 21st, he repeated louder, his voice trembling. Marcus turned to the jury. "So you could not have developed algorithms between January and March because you weren't employed yet." A ripple of shock spread across the courtroom. Marcus held up a second document. "And here are the server logs from Quantum Corp. They show the core algorithms were completed on March 15th, 2021, more than a month before you were hired. Would you like to explain how you contributed to a project that existed before you did?" Morris leapt to her feet. "Objection! The prosecution did not receive this document." "Your Honor," Marcus said calmly, "these came directly from Quantum Corp's own system. If they failed to review the evidence available to them, that is not my fault." "Objection overruled," Judge Fisk said. "Proceed." Bryce's hands began to shake. Marcus fixed his gaze on him. "Dr. Bryce, one final question. Did you receive a payment of $300,000 from Nexus Innovations 2 weeks before testifying here today?" Bryce froze. That was, yes or no, doctor? I was compensated for my time and expertise." $300,000 for false testimony, Marcus said, voice sharp as steel. "Sounds more like a bribe than compensation." The room erupted. Marcus turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I move to enter evidence of this transaction and request that the witness be charged with perjury." Gasps, shouts, furious typing from reporters. The courtroom felt like it had detonated, and for the first time since the trial began, Marcus saw something he had been waiting for. Fear in the eyes of Catherine Morris. They had never expected that a janitor would know how to tear their entire case apart. After the hearing, Marcus and Isabella stepped out of the courthouse into a forest of cameras and microphones. Reporters shouted questions from every direction, flash after flash bursting like lightning in a storm. Marcus lowered his head, placing a light hand on Isabella's back, skillfully guiding her through the chaotic crowd. Only when the taxi door shut, blocking out the noise, did Isabella finally breathe out. "How did you know about the payment to Bryce?" she asked, still shaken. Marcus opened his old canvas briefcase. Not the leather kind, but the kind he'd bought from a thrift store. "I didn't know for sure," he said calmly. "But in cases like this, money always leaves a trail." "I guessed," and the look in his eyes confirmed it. "You bluffed?" Isabella stared at him, genuinely surprised. Marcus shrugged lightly. "Almost. But after I saw his reaction, I had someone double-check." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. "My daughter, Leah. She works in digital marketing, but her ability to dig up information is remarkable. Ever since I told her about this case, she's been investigating." His phone buzzed, a new message from Leah. "Dad, I found something big. Call me." Marcus looked up, turning to Isabella. "We need to meet my daughter. Right now." An hour later, they sat in a small cafe in Queens, a space as foreign to Isabella as another planet. The cafe was cramped, plastic chairs squeaked, the smell of cheap coffee mixed with old frying oil. But most importantly, it was private. No reporters, no cameras, no lawyers. Leah Carter walked in. Marcus stood up abruptly, awkward, like a father unsure whether he still had the right to hug his daughter. Leah resolved it first. She stepped forward and hugged him. A quick, slightly hesitant hug, but a real one. She was 20, with long, natural hair pulled back into a ponytail and eyes like her father's. Deep, intelligent, observant. Jeans, a simple t-shirt, but carrying an expensive laptop and the confident walk of someone who knew her worth. "Dad," she said, then turned to Isabella. "And you must be Isabella Sterling. I'm Leah." They shook hands. Isabella couldn't help noticing the contrast. her well-maintained hand, softened by luxury skincare, facing the practical, work-built hands of Leah, a young woman who had built her own life from the ground up. Leah opened her laptop. Okay, at first I wasn't sure what Dad wanted me to look for, so I started with Nexus Innovations, she said. On the surface, they're spotless. A venture-funded tech startup with a very tidy corporate history. She scrolled through a series of documents. But when I dug into the ownership structure, things got strange. Nexus is owned by a shell company in Delaware. That company is owned by another in the Cayman Islands. And that company, she paused, is owned by Atlantic Energy Corporation. Marcus froze. Atlantic Energy, he repeated. You know them? Leah asked. Oh yes, Marcus said quietly. They're the company that destroyed my career 15 years ago. Leah stared at him, eyes wide. They had never truly spoken openly about it, about what happened, about who was behind it. It was them all along, she whispered. Isabella leaned forward. But why would an energy company care about my technology? At first I didn't get it either, Leah said. But then I read more about your tech. She turned the laptop so both Isabella and Marcus could see. It's not just computing. If you can stabilize qubits at room temperature, the energy applications, she pulled up a scientific article, are game-changing. She pointed to a highlighted section. An MIT professor wrote that your technology could revolutionize energy storage and conversion. It could make fossil fuels obsolete within 20 years. 20 years, Isabella repeated, each word heavier than the last. And Atlantic Energy makes $28 billion a year from coal, oil, and gas, Leah finished. If your technology works as published, they don't just lose profit, they lose their entire empire. Marcus leaned back, as if the pieces had finally clicked into place. That's why they didn't try to buy you out or compete with you, he said slowly. They needed to erase you, erase your technology, erase your credibility. But more than that, Leah continued, I kept digging. Atlantic Energy has ties to 4 other major energy conglomerates, 2 defense contractors, and, she paused again, 3 sitting members of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Leah pulled up more documents. Images of campaign contributions, fundraising dinners, lavish trips. They've built a network. And when your technology came into view, they activated that entire network. What about the lawyers? Isabella asked, her voice cracking. How did they? I'm still tracing it, Leah said. But the managing partner at Preston, Holloway and Schmidt, he sits on the board of a subsidiary of Atlantic Energy. The information isn't easy to find, but it's there if you know where to dig. Marcus stood and began pacing the cramped cafe, his mind moving as fast as Leah's words. So this isn't just a lawsuit, he said. This is a coordinated campaign to clear the path for a $1 trillion industry. And they won't stop, Isabella said, fear now clearly visible in her eyes. If they did this to you 15 years ago, if they can manipulate things to this extent. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. All 3 of them understood. Leah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face drained. It's my old boss. He says I don't need to come back to the office. My belongings will be mailed to me. They fired you? Isabella asked. On paper, it's position eliminated, Leah said bitterly. But the timing says everything. Marcus placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. I'm sorry, Leah. I never wanted to pull you into this. Leah looked up, her eyes steadier than before. You didn't pull me into anything. I chose this. And now that I'm in, I'm helping you fight. For the first time in years, Marcus didn't see Leah as the child who had lost her mother or the grown woman he had missed for too many years. He saw something else, an ally, a partner. "All right," he said, exhaling as if sealing a decision. "Then we do this together." In the days that followed, the threats were no longer a vague feeling. They became clear signs, sharp and dangerous enough to make Marcus's stomach tighten every time he thought about them. His small apartment in Queens was broken into. Nothing was stolen. There was nothing of value to take, but everything was torn apart. The closet yanked open, drawers dumped onto the floor, the mattress slashed with a long, deep cut. As if someone wanted to send a message. "We know where you live." Leah's laptop was hacked. Thankfully, she had backed up all her data to an encrypted cloud server. But the fact that someone had intentionally breached her device and done it blatantly sent a chill down her spine. Then one night, as Isabella left the office late, a black SUV ran a red light and sped straight toward her car. Her driver swerved in time. The car spun, crashing into a lamppost to avoid a head-on collision. Isabella escaped with only scrapes and bruises, but the message was carved in stone. She was a target. During an emergency meeting at Isabella's mansion the next morning, she said clearly, "You need to get out of your apartment, Marcus. Leah, you both need to move here, where I have real security." "We can't just live in your home like that," Marcus began, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't want to owe you anything else." "This isn't a favor," Isabella cut in firmly. "This is a defensive strategy. They're attacking us individually. If we stay together, with professional security, we're safer." Leah placed a hand on her father's arm. "She's right, Dad. How am I supposed to work if I keep worrying someone will break in every night?" Reluctantly, Marcus agreed. That afternoon, they moved into the guest house on Isabella's estate, a smaller, separate building, but still bigger than anywhere Marcus had ever lived in his life. While Leah excitedly explored the rooms, Marcus remained in the living room. Back straight, but hands unconsciously tightening. The high ceilings, designer furniture, expensive paintings on the walls. All of it made him feel like an ink blot on a perfect canvas. He stared out through the glass doors into the meticulously trimmed garden. It was hard to believe that just 48 hours earlier, he'd been in an apartment barely big enough for one person to turn around in. Isabella entered the room and stopped beside him. "You're uncomfortable," she observed without needing to ask. "I've lived 15 years in a small apartment," Marcus said in a low voice. "And this place, this isn't my world." Isabella stood beside Marcus for a long moment, as if giving him time to breathe in this unfamiliar space. Then she spoke gently. "Maybe it should be your world. You have talent, strength, Mr. Carter. You could have been in a place like this, or far better, if they hadn't taken everything from you." Marcus turned toward her, and for the first time since they met in the courtroom, he truly looked at Isabella. Not as a client, not as a billionaire, but as a woman fighting for justice alongside him. Her blue eyes, though tired, gleamed with something rare, genuine respect. "I don't need any of this," Marcus replied, his voice firm. "I never did. I want justice. I want to help people who have no voice. And after all these years, I finally have a chance to do that again." "By helping me," Isabella said. "By fighting those who believe money and power place them above the law," Marcus corrected. They stood silently in the wide living room, the afternoon sunlight filtering softly through the large glass wall. The distance between their worlds, a janitor who used to be a lawyer and a billionaire tech founder, was still there. But in that moment, it didn't feel as impossible as before. Something had shifted. Not because of what they said, but because they were standing side by side, facing a common enemy. And in that silence, they knew. The real battle had only just begun. The next major breakthrough came from a place no one could have imagined. At 2 in the morning, Sophie Grant, Isabella's longtime assistant, appeared at the gate. Her face was pale, clothes disheveled, hair blown out as if she had been out in the wind all night. Security immediately informed Isabella, and she hurried to wake Marcus. They met Sophie in a small room separate from the main house, a safety measure in case this was a trap. Sophie nearly collapsed when she saw Isabella. Her makeup was smeared with tears, her hands trembling violently. "I'm sorry," she blurted out at once. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Isabella asked, her voice sharp as steel. Sophie took a deep breath. "For everything. For copying the files. For passing information to them. For staying silent when I knew what they were doing to you." "Who is them?" Marcus asked. "Victor Hale," Sophie replied, her voice hoarse. "The CEO of Nexus Innovations. He came to see me 6 months ago. He knew about my mistake." "What mistake?" Isabella asked. Sophie looked down at her hands, too ashamed to lift her head. 10 years ago, before I worked for you, I worked at another company. I embezzled $50,000. Not a lot, but still a crime. I paid the money back, and the company didn't call the police. I thought it was over. But Hale found out. "Blackmail," Marcus said. Sophie nodded, tears spilling again. "He had documents, emails, bank statements, everything. He told me that if I didn't help him, he'd turn me in. I would go to prison." "So you chose to help him," Isabella said, her tone flat. "I copied the data. I told him your strategies. Sophie choked up. "I even planted false information in some files to make it look like you accessed Nexus research." "Fabricated evidence," Marcus said darkly. "Exactly what they once did to me." "But why come here now?" Isabella asked, her gaze icy but with a trace of pity. Sophie pulled out a phone. Not her own, but a high-end model completely out of place in her pocket. Marcus recognized it immediately. This wasn't Sophie's personal phone. "Today," Sophie said, her hand shaking, "I accidentally overheard Hale on the phone. He told someone about a permanent solution if the legal route failed." She swallowed hard. "They were talking about killing you, Isabella." The room suddenly felt freezing. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I betrayed you," Sophie continued, voice breaking. "But I can't live with this. Not with murder." She handed the phone to Marcus. "This is Hale's phone. I took it from his office. It has everything: messages, emails, call recordings, the whole conspiracy." Marcus took the phone, feeling as if he were holding a grenade with the pin pulled. "This could end the case," Leah said from the doorway. She had arrived without anyone noticing. "Or end us. If they realize she took it," Isabella whispered. "Hale will search for the phone by morning, if not sooner," Sophie said. "He'll notice it's gone. That's why I came straight here." Isabella stared at Sophie for a long moment. This woman had been by her side for 5 years, through stressful meetings, fundraising rounds, and sleepless nights. And now, she was the one who had stabbed her in the back. But in those tear-filled eyes in front of her, Isabella saw not just fear. She saw remorse, real and deep. "You risked your own safety to come here," Isabella said, her voice softening for the first time. "I owe you more than that," Sophie replied, trembling. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You trusted me, and I betrayed that. This is the least I can do." Marcus didn't hesitate. "We need to copy every piece of data on this phone immediately. Leah, can you do it?" "Give me 15 minutes, Leah said, already opening her laptop. While Leah worked, Marcus asked Sophie, "You know they'll come looking for you, right?" Sophie nodded. "I know. You need to disappear, at least until the case is over." "I have a sister in Canada," Sophie said. "I can go there." "Go now," Marcus said firmly. "Don't go home, don't pack, go straight there." 20 minutes later, all the data had been safely backed up onto Leah's encrypted server. In the darkness, Sophie left in a taxi, never looking back. Marcus watched the car until its taillights vanished, wondering whether they were right to trust her, and whether she would survive the night. Isabella stood beside him, her voice soft but steady. "She truly is sorry." "Sorry doesn't erase the damage," Marcus said bluntly. "No," Isabella agreed, "but courage can redeem it. She knew they would retaliate, and still came here." Marcus drew a long breath, his jaw tightening with iron determination. "Now we have to use what she gave us, and we need to move fast, because once they realize we have this evidence—" He looked down at the phone in his hand, the live proof of a massive conspiracy. "They'll come at us with everything they have." They didn't have to wait long. The next morning, as Marcus, Leah, and Isabella were reviewing every piece of evidence inside Victor Hale's phone, the estate's security alarms abruptly screamed through the intercom system. "Breach at the main gate," the security director reported. "Multiple individuals, armed." Isabella shot to her feet, locked down the entire property, and called the police. But as the security screen switched angles, the truth became unmistakable. 6 men in tactical uniforms, fully equipped, moving through the estate with the precision of people who had clearly received military training. "They're not police," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "Mercenaries," said Maddox, the head of security, ex-military, with the calm intensity of someone who had seen war. "Ex-military or private contractors. They know exactly what they're doing." "We have to get out of here," Leah panicked, but the cameras showed 2 more vehicles blocking the back exit. No escape route left. Maddox, formerly NYPD and now head of Isabella's security, made a decision immediately. "Safe room, move, now." He led them across the house, down to the basement, unlocking a steel door hidden behind a wine cabinet. Inside was a compact panic room, reinforced concrete walls, surveillance monitors, and a direct hardline to 911. "You'll be safe in here," Maddox said. "This door can withstand explosives. My team and I will hold them off as long as we can." "Police are on their way," Isabella said. "Earliest arrival is 15 minutes, Maddox replied. "We only need to survive 15. The door shut behind them with a cold, metallic clack. Inside the panic room, the 3 stared at the surveillance screens. The mercenaries moved like shadows, silent, methodical, each step calculated. Maddox and the 4 guards under him were already in defensive positions. "They're going to die," Leah whispered, her hands trembling. "Those men are outgunned and outnumbered." "Maddox knows how to fight," Isabella said, trying to sound steady, but her voice shook. Then the gunfight began. On the monitors, the battle unfolded like a nightmare, stripped of sound. Maddox and his team fought fiercely, using every corridor and blind spot. But the intruders were professionals, moving with flawless formation. 1 guard fell, 1 mercenary went down, but the attackers kept advancing. "They're heading for the basement," Marcus said. "They know we're here." Isabella stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of color. "Sophie, she must have told them about the safe room." "Or they had the floor plans from day 1, Leah said quickly. "Either way, they know." Marcus looked around the room. 1 door, no windows, no backup exit, no weapons. They were trapped inside a metal coffin, waiting to be opened. On screen, a mercenary placed a device on the basement door. "They're planting explosives," Leah said, terror rising in her voice. Marcus dialed 911. "We're under attack at 247 Hudson Yards. Multiple armed assailants with explosives. We need immediate support." "The nearest unit is 3 minutes out," the operator said. "Stay inside." 3 minutes. But the explosives would blow in less than 1. Isabella squeezed Marcus's hand. "If this is how it ends, it isn't," he cut her off. "We've come too far. We don't end like this." Just as the device began to blink, seconds from detonation, an unexpected image flashed onto the monitors. Police vehicles, then more police vehicles, then SWAT, armored trucks. Not one or two, but nearly an entire strike force pouring into the estate. The mercenaries saw it too. They halted, exchanged hand signals, then retreated, disappearing as quickly as they arrived, leaving the explosive behind, still untriggered. "They're running!" Leah almost screamed in disbelief. 10 minutes later, SWAT secured the property, disarmed the device, and cleared every structure. When the panic room door finally opened, Marcus, Isabella, and Leah stepped out, faces pale but alive. A tall man in an FBI jacket was waiting, badge partially visible. "Agent Blake Hollister, Miss Sterling, Mr. Carter, I'm glad you're safe," he said. Isabella immediately asked, "How did you get here so fast?" "We've been monitoring Victor Hale and his associates for weeks," Hollister said. "When a taxi driver reported transporting a woman matching Sophie Grant's description toward the Canadian border, we knew something major had happened. We deployed a team immediately." "Is she safe?" Isabella asked softly. "Sophie. She's under protective custody in Canada," Hollister said, "and she's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity." Marcus exhaled, years of weight releasing from his chest. "So we have enough to bring them down?" "More than enough," Hollister replied, a thin, controlled smile forming. "We arrested Victor Hale, 3 Atlantic Energy executives, and 6 other accomplices within the last hour. With the data from his phone, Sophie's testimony, and this attack," he straightened, his voice firm, "they're going to prison for a very, very long time." The next morning, when Marcus stepped into the courtroom, the atmosphere had completely changed. There were no longer curious stares treating him like a novelty. What replaced them was a quiet respect from the reporters, the jury, even the court staff. Even the prosecution attorneys looked drained, as though they had just survived a battle they knew they could never win. Judge Matthew Rourke, assigned after Judge Fisk recused herself due to a conflict of interest, struck his gavel to open the session. "I am aware there were significant developments overnight," he said. Prosecutor Catherine Morris rose, her shoulders nearly collapsed. "Your Honor, in light of the new arrests and the evidence presented this morning, the prosecution moves to dismiss all charges against Miss Sterling." The courtroom exploded. Reporters shouted. Camera flashes burst like lightning. Marcus remained seated, watching Morris with a strange sense of sympathy. She too had been a pawn in a game far larger than she could have comprehended. "The motion is granted," Judge Rourke declared. "Miss Sterling, you are free." He paused, eyes lingering on Marcus. "And Mr. Carter, this court has never witnessed such a remarkable act in pursuit of justice. You are deserving of every recognition that will follow." As they walked out of the courtroom, Isabella turned to Marcus, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We did it. We actually won." "You won," Marcus said gently. "You never gave up, not even when everything looked hopeless." Leah wrapped her arms around both of them, breaking the solemnity. "No, we won. As a team." 2 months later, Marcus stood outside a building on 5th Avenue, looking up at the freshly mounted sign, "Carter and Carter Law, Anti-Discrimination and Civil Rights." Leah stood beside him, holding a brand new law textbook. After everything she had witnessed, she had enrolled in law school, a decision born directly from the trial that changed their lives. "Do you think we can really run this place?" Leah asked, her voice a mix of excitement and doubt. "We can," Marcus said. "We already have our first 3 clients, all of them people who were turned away because they couldn't afford an attorney." Leah smiled. "Thanks to the Sterling Legal Justice Fund." Isabella had not only founded the fund with an initial $15 million contribution, she had rallied support from tech CEOs across the industry who had followed the trial closely. The fund would sponsor civil rights cases across America, ensuring that no one would ever have to fight alone again. As they entered the still empty office, Marcus heard the sound of heels behind him. He turned. Isabella stood at the door, holding a bottle of champagne, her warm smile filling the bare room. "I thought we should celebrate a little," she said. Leah understood immediately. "I'll go look for some glasses. It might take a while." Then she slipped away, leaving Marcus and Isabella alone in the quiet office. They stood side by side in the unfinished room, wrapped in the peace that follows a storm. "I never properly thanked you," Isabella said softly, "for standing up that day, for believing in me when everyone else turned their backs." "There's nothing to thank," Marcus replied. "You gave me something I thought I had lost forever, a purpose." Over the past 2 months, through investigations, press conferences, and work for the foundation, something had shifted between them. It began as respect, then friendship, and now, standing here in the gentle afternoon light streaming through the windows, it had become something deeper. "Marcus," she said, calling him by his first name for the very first time. He turned to her. "I know we come from 2 different worlds," she continued. "I know people will talk, but I've realized the only thing that truly matters." "What is it?" he asked quietly. "Is that the world doesn't matter. People's opinions don't matter. What matters is finding someone who understands you, stands beside you, and makes you a better version of yourself." She paused, then continued in a whisper. "And I found that person." Marcus's heart stalled. Since Sarah died 15 years ago, he had never once allowed himself to love again. He buried the grief, buried the hope, buried the idea that he was worthy of another chance. But Isabella, who had seen past the janitor's uniform, past the scars, had broken through every wall. "I live a completely different life," Marcus said softly. "I have nothing but integrity," Isabella interrupted gently, "and courage and kindness, and a heart that knows how to fight for what's right." She touched his hand. "I had money and success. What I didn't have was someone who saw me as a human being." Marcus looked down at their hands, one soft, one calloused, different yet fitting together with impossible ease. "Sarah was the love of my youth," he said. "I thought that part of my life was over." "But," Isabella asked, her voice nearly a breath. "But maybe we are given more than one chance," he said, "if we're brave enough to take it." They stood there, in a silence so gentle it felt like the world had paused outside. Then Marcus leaned in, slow, careful, tender. The kiss was a promise from 2 people who had been broken, had lost so much, yet still found the courage to hope again. Leah's voice suddenly echoed from the back room. "I can't find any glasses. We might have to buy some." Marcus and Isabella burst into laughter, the private moment dissolving into warm ease. "Come on," Isabella said, taking Marcus's hand. "Let's show your daughter her new office, and maybe tonight the 3 of us can go out to dinner." "I'd like that," Marcus said. Before stepping out, he paused at the door, looking once more at the sign, Carter & Carter Law. A new beginning, a second chance. No, he corrected himself silently. A second life. 3 years later, Carter & Carter Law had grown into something far bigger than Marcus ever imagined. They had taken on over 200 cases, defending workers wrongfully terminated, immigrants facing deportation, families fighting corporations that polluted their neighborhoods. They had won, most of them. But more importantly, they had given people something money couldn't buy: dignity. Leah graduated at the top of her law school class and became Marcus's full partner. She was fierce in the courtroom, compassionate with clients, and unshakable in her belief that the law was meant to protect the powerless, not just the privileged. Isabella's technology revolutionized the energy industry, just as the conspiracy had feared. Within 5 years, her quantum processors were being used in solar grids, battery storage systems, and data centers around the world. She became not just a billionaire, but a symbol of what innovation could do when it wasn't crushed by greed. And Marcus? He never became famous. His name didn't appear in history books or on magazine covers. But every person he defended, every case he won, every time he stood up in a courtroom and said, "This is wrong, and I will fight it," he changed the world in ways that couldn't be measured. One evening, Marcus and Isabella sat together on the balcony of their home. Not the mansion, but a modest brownstone in Brooklyn they had bought together. Leah was inside, preparing dinner with her partner, laughing over something trivial and beautiful. "Do you ever miss it?" Isabella asked. "The quiet life? Before all of this?" Marcus thought for a long moment. "No," he said, "because that life was surviving. He gestured toward the light spilling from the kitchen, the sound of Leah's laughter, the warmth of Isabella's hand in his. "This is living." Isabella leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "people still ask me why I let a janitor defend me in court. And what do you tell them?" She smiled. "I tell them he wasn't a janitor. He was the best lawyer I ever met. He just happened to be holding a mop." Marcus Carter's story reminds us that it is never too late to begin again. That justice isn't measured by wealth or status, but by courage and the unshakable will to fight back. That heroes come in many forms, sometimes wearing cleaning gloves instead of a tailored suit. He shows us that failure is not the end, that betrayal can be overcome, and that even after the deepest losses, love can still find its way back. Most importantly, Marcus proves that every one of us has the power to stand up, to speak out, and to fight for what is right, no matter who tries to silence us. So let me ask you this. If you were in Marcus's place, what would you choose? A stable corporate job with a high salary, or starting a new path to defend those who have no voice? Share your answer in the comments below. And if this story of perseverance and justice moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next extraordinary story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that one person standing up for what's right can change the world. Thank you for watching.